The sirens didn't belong to the city. They belonged to the port. Low, mechanical, wrong. Marcus Hale stood at the edge of Pier 19, watching floodlights carve up the fog like knives. The container that wasn't supposed to be there sat open, steel doors yawning like a mouth mid-scream. Inside, nothing. No cargo, no manifests, just a smear of blood on corrugated metal and a single dropped phone still buzzing. 3 hours earlier, Marcus had been invisible. A logistics analyst with a burner desk and a badge that barely worked. Now, every eye on the pier kept drifting back to him, like they knew he was already implicated. The phone buzzed again. Unknown number. He didn't answer. He already knew who it was. 24 hours earlier, Marcus had been sitting at a family dinner in coastal Virginia, enduring the annual ritual of polite humiliation. His father, a retired federal judge, had raised a glass to his siblings' promotions, then turned to Marcus with a tight smile. "Still moving boxes, son?" Laughter, crystal glasses, linen napkins. Marcus smiled because that's what you do when you're the failure who didn't go to law school, didn't run for office, didn't inherit relevance. They didn't know he'd spent the last 4 years building a shadow logistics platform out of decommissioned warehouses and stolen compute time. They didn't know that tonight, his system rerouted cargo worth more than the house they were sitting in. They definitely didn't know that one reroute had gone very wrong. Back at the pier, a Coast Guard officer waved him over. "You're the one who flagged the anomaly?" Marcus nodded. His mouth tasted like copper. "What was supposed to be in the container?" Marcus looked at the open steel box, at the blood, at the phone vibrating itself to death on the floor. "Medical supplies," he said. That was the lie. The truth was worse. The phone stopped buzzing. Then the harbor lights went out. The blackout lasted 11 seconds. Long enough for someone to move. Long enough for Marcus to realize the port had gone quiet in a way that didn't belong to infrastructure failure. No horns, no radios, just water slapping steel and the low thrum of generators dying one by one. When the lights snapped back on, the phone in the container was gone. Marcus didn't react. He'd learned early that sudden movement invited attention, and attention was a currency he couldn't afford. Around him, officers barked orders, flashlights sweeping, boots clanging on metal. Someone swore. Someone else asked where the evidence bag was. Marcus stepped back into the shadow of a crane and pulled his own phone from his pocket. No signal, of course. He replayed the last 48 hours in fragments. The dinner table, his father's smile, sharp and surgical. "Still moving boxes, son." The laugh that followed, warm and practiced. And then, later that night, the alert from his system. An unauthorized override, root-level access. Someone ghosting a container through 3 ports without triggering customs. Only one client had that clearance. Only one shipment moved without paperwork. The container at Pier 19 wasn't empty by mistake. It had been scrubbed. A hand clamped onto Marcus's shoulder. He didn't flinch. Marcus Hale? A man in a windbreaker stood too close, breath heavy with coffee and nicotine. No uniform, federal posture. "I'm Agent Cole, Department of Homeland Security. We need to talk." "About what?" Marcus asked. Cole glanced at the container, then back at Marcus. "About how your predictive routing platform flagged this shipment 12 minutes before it disappeared." Marcus held his gaze. "That's impossible. My system doesn't monitor classified cargo." Cole smiled without humor. "It does now." They walked toward the temporary command trailer. Inside, monitors glowed with satellite maps and shipping lanes. Marcus recognized his own interface on one screen, his code, mirrored and unauthorized. "Who gave you access?" he asked quietly. Cole didn't answer. Instead, he slid a tablet across the table. On it, a still frame from port security footage. The blackout. A figure moving fast. Familiar gait, familiar jacket. Marcus's jacket. "You want to explain this?" Cole said. Marcus stared at the image as his phone finally vibrated once in his pocket. One message. Unknown number. "You built the system. Now you belong to it." They didn't arrest him. That was worse. Agent Cole let the silence stretch, the way men do when they want you to fill it with mistakes. Marcus said nothing. He focused on breathing, on the faint hum of generators restarting outside, on the fact that his code was glowing on a government monitor without his permission. "Your platform didn't just flag the container," Cole said finally. "It rerouted it, 3 times. Each reroute bypassed a different safeguard." "That's not possible," Marcus said. "Those permissions don't exist." Cole tapped the screen. "They do if someone builds them." Marcus leaned closer. The logic tree on the monitor was elegant. Too elegant. A hidden branch folded into the routing protocol, dormant unless a very specific pattern appeared. Weather, traffic, port congestion, customs delay. A ghost path, he hadn't written that. But he recognized the style. "Someone modified my system," Marcus said. "Yes," Cole replied. "Someone with your access keys." Cold spread under Marcus's ribs. His keys were air-gapped, split storage, redundancies, paranoid-level security born from years of being overlooked and underprotected. Unless... "When was the last time you logged in from home?" Cole asked. Marcus saw it then. The dinner, the guest room. His father's study down the hall, door ajar, the soft blue glow of a screen at 2 a.m. He'd assumed it was work. Judicial habits died hard. "Who else was in that house?" Cole pressed. Marcus didn't answer. Cole slid another photo forward. A Senate fundraiser. Coastal Virginia. 3 weeks ago. His brother Daniel, smiling beside a man Marcus recognized instantly despite the grainy resolution. Victor Rourke, private logistics magnate, defense contracts. Shell companies stacked like shipping containers. A man who didn't move cargo, he moved leverage. "You know him?" Cole asked. "I know of him," Marcus said. "He's not a client." "He is now." Outside, a shout cut through the night. Radios crackled. Someone had found something. They rushed back to the pier. At the waterline, wedged between pylons, floated a waterproof case. Inside, a hard drive and a second phone. The phone lit up as Marcus picked it up. Face recognition unlocked it instantly. His face. A video began to play, shaky, dark. A man on his knees bleeding just close enough to recognize. The man looked into the camera and whispered, "Marcus, if you see this, it means they chose you." The screen went black. Behind him, Agent Cole said quietly, "Congratulations, you're officially involved." Marcus stared at the dead screen as his phone vibrated again in his pocket. Another message. "Next move decides who dies." They released him at dawn. No cuffs, no paperwork, just a look from Agent Cole that said, "We know where you sleep now." Marcus drove away from the port with the windows down, cold air burning his lungs, replaying the video frame by frame in his head. The man's face, the fear. The way he'd said they chose you like a verdict, not a warning. By the time Marcus reached his apartment, the city was waking up. Joggers, coffee shops, normal life pretending nothing was wrong. He locked the door behind him, slid the deadbolt, then unplugged every smart device in the place. Old habits. Paranoia sharpened by necessity. He powered up his offline terminal. His system, Atlas, was still running, but parts of it were no longer answering to him. Routes auto-corrected before he touched them. Permissions replicated themselves like bacteria. Someone had embedded a command layer deep enough that even rollback wouldn't flush it out. A parasite. Elegant. Patient. His phone buzzed. Unknown number again. Check your calendar. 9:30 a.m. Courthouse Cafe, come alone. Marcus checked the time, 8:57. He didn't respond. At 9:12, another message came through. Miss it, and the man in the video doesn't get a second chance. Marcus grabbed his jacket. The Courthouse Cafe was all glass and bad lighting, designed to make deals feel respectable. The man waiting for him wore a tailored coat and a smile that belonged on a billboard. Victor Rourke looked smaller in person. That was the trick. "Marcus Hale," Rourke said, standing. "You look tired, Big Night?" Marcus didn't sit. "Where is he?" Rourke gestured to the chair. "Alive, for now. Sit." Marcus sat. "You built a beautiful system," Rourke continued. "Predictive, adaptive, invisible. Governments pay billions for tools like that. Criminals kill for them." "I don't work for you," Marcus said. Rourke nodded. "You already do, you just haven't accepted the compensation." He slid a folder across the table. Inside, bank routing numbers, shell companies, zeros stacked like a threat. "And my family?" Marcus asked quietly. Rourke smiled again. "Especially your family. Your brother opens doors I don't want traced. Your father legitimizes things that shouldn't be questioned." Marcus felt the weight of it settle in his chest. This wasn't about money. It never was. "You built the road," Rourke said. "Now decide who gets to use it." Outside, sirens wailed. Distant, unrelated. Marcus closed the folder. "I need time," he said. Rourke stood. "You have 48 hours. As Rourke walked away, Marcus's phone buzzed one last time. A photo. The man from the video, alive, bruised, holding today's newspaper. Under it, one line of text. 48 hours, start now. Marcus didn't go home. He drove until the city thinned into warehouses and scrapyards, then pulled into a fenced lot with a rusted sign that read, "Closed. Environmental." It hadn't been closed in years. That was the point. He keyed in a code no one but him remembered and rolled inside. The warehouse smelled like dust and old oil. This was where Atlas had really been born. Not in clean offices, but here, among servers balanced on milk crates and extension cords that hummed like insects. Marcus powered up the isolated rig. No network, no cloud, just raw logic. He had 48 hours to do 3 impossible things. Find where Rourke had hidden the hostage. Prove Atlas was compromised without burning himself. Figure out who in his family had sold him out. Or, if they even knew. He started with the parasite. Digging into the code felt like performing surgery on his own spine. Whoever modified Atlas understood his habits. The indentation style, the naming conventions, even the private jokes buried in comments. This wasn't an outside hacker. This was someone who'd studied him. Marcus froze when he saw the signature buried deep in the ghost layer. Not a name, a pattern, a recursive loop he only ever used once before. At MIT on a joint research project with Daniel. His phone buzzed, this time a known number. Daniel. Marcus let it ring until it stopped, then a text appeared. "Dad says DHS was at the house this morning. What the hell did you do?" Marcus exhaled slowly. He ran a simulation, feeding Atlas false data, fake congestion, artificial storms, phantom strikes. The system reacted instantly, rerouting cargo toward 3 inland facilities. Facilities that didn't exist. Shell coordinates. Someone had built shadow warehouses the same way you'd build offshore accounts, and Atlas knew exactly where they were. A second realization hit harder. The system wasn't just moving cargo, it was selecting targets. Medical shipments delayed, relief trucks misrouted. Supply chains quietly strangled in places no one watched until it was too late. This wasn't leverage, it was population control. Marcus slammed his fist into the table. His phone lit up again. A new message. New number. You're looking in the wrong direction. The betrayal is older than you think. Attached was a photo. A scanned document. 10 years old. A non-disclosure agreement with Marcus's signature at the bottom, and his father's name typed neatly beside it as legal witness. Marcus felt the room tilt, because he didn't remember signing it, and because the NDA covered technology that didn't officially exist yet. Outside, tires crunched on gravel. Someone was coming. Marcus killed the lights and stepped away from the terminal just as headlights swept across the warehouse windows. An engine idled, then another. Too controlled for cops. Too quiet for thieves. He moved on instinct, pulled the floor panel loose, dropped the drive into the crawl space, slid the panel back just as the side door buckled inward. Men poured in, 3, black jackets, no insignia, efficient. "Marcus Hale," one of them called. "We're here to help." Marcus stayed still, breath shallow, heart punching against his ribs. Help was never loud enough to break doors. They spread out, boots crunching over gravel and broken glass. One headed straight for the terminal. Another swept the perimeter. The third stopped 10 feet from Marcus's hiding spot and tilted his head like he could smell fear. Marcus waited for the mistake. It came in the form of a phone vibration. The man closest to him glanced down. Reflex. Marcus surged up, drove his shoulder into the man's ribs, felt something crack. He didn't stop, he ran. Past servers, past Sparks, through the back exit and into the maze of stacked containers behind the warehouse. Shots rang out. Metal screamed. A bullet punched through a container inches from his head. Marcus ducked, slid, rolled, came up, gasping. He vaulted a fence and didn't stop running until his lungs burned and the city swallowed him whole. He surfaced in a public parking garage downtown, shaking, soaked in sweat. He checked his phone. 5 missed calls from Daniel. 1 voicemail. "Marcus," Daniel said, voice tight, stripped of polish. "Dad's gone. Someone took him from the house an hour ago. They left instructions." Marcus leaned against a concrete pillar as the garage spun. "What instructions?" he asked when Daniel called again immediately. Silence on the line. Then, "They said if you don't finish what you started, he won't finish the week." The pieces slammed together with brutal clarity. The NDA, the ghost code, the witness signature. His father hadn't just known, he'd enabled it, years ago, quietly, legally, selling future systems to men like Rourke while pretending to protect the law. And now the debt was due. Marcus closed his eyes. "Daniel," he said, voice steady despite the chaos ripping through him. "Listen to me carefully. Everything you think you know about Dad, about me, it's wrong. And if you talk to anyone else, you'll get him killed." "What do we do?" Daniel whispered. Marcus opened his eyes and looked at the city like it was a board waiting to be played. "We flip the system," he said, "and we do it publicly." His phone buzzed again. "Rourke. Clock's still ticking. Make your move." Marcus typed 1 line back. "I am." Marcus didn't sleep. He and Daniel met in a hospital parking lot just before midnight, the kind of place cameras watched but no one really saw. Daniel looked smaller than Marcus remembered, jacket wrinkled, confidence leaking out through clenched fists. "You're sure this works?" Daniel asked. Marcus opened the trunk of his car. Inside, 2 burner laptops, a satellite modem, and a hard drive wrapped in duct tape like a bad habit. "It doesn't have to work forever," he said. "It just has to work once, in the open." They drove east, crossing state lines without stopping, ending at a co-working space built inside an abandoned newspaper plant. Marcus had picked it because of the irony. News used to be printed here. Tonight, they were going to manufacture it. Marcus jacked into Atlas through the satellite link. The system fought him, rate limits tightening, permissions snapping shut like jaws, but the parasite responded to his touch. It trusted him. That was its flaw. He opened the ghost layer and rewrote one condition. If interference exceeds threshold, then broadcast. Daniel leaned over his shoulder. "Broadcast where?" Marcus smiled thinly. "Everywhere." At 3:17 a.m., Atlas rerouted 6 high-profile shipments simultaneously. Nothing lethal, nothing illegal. Just enough disruption to trigger oversight alarms across 3 agencies and 2 multinational insurers. Then the broadcast hit. Encrypted logs, internal messages, shell warehouse coordinates, time-stamped authorizations signed years ago by judges, senators, defense liaisons, the NDA, his father's signature, Daniel's old research code, quietly repurposed. The story detonated online before sunrise. By morning, Victor Rourke's name was trending next to words like blackmail and humanitarian sabotage. News vans lined up outside federal buildings. Emergency hearings were announced. Deniability collapsed. Marcus's phone rang nonstop. Then, finally, a message came through on the burner. "You just declared war." Marcus typed back, "No." I ended it. A second message followed immediately. "Wrong. You took my leverage. I take yours." An address pinged onto Marcus's screen. Rural, off-grid, familiar coastline. Daniel paled. Yeah, Marcus said. "That's the old estate. The place they grew up. The place their father had vanished from." Sirens wailed in the distance, getting closer. Marcus shut the laptop. "Get out of the city," he told Daniel. "Disappear. If anyone asks, you don't know me." "And you?" Marcus grabbed the hard drive. "I'm going to finish this." As he walked toward the door, his phone buzzed one last time. A photo loaded. Their father, alive, bruised, sitting at the long dining table from 100 forced holidays. In front of him, 2 glasses. Under the image, 1 sentence. "Come home." The estate looked smaller at night. Marcus parked a mile down the road and walked the rest, cutting through pine and damp earth, the air thick with salt and old money. The house sat dark except for the dining room, lights blazing like an interrogation room. Room, same table, different power dynamic. He circled once before approaching. Too quiet. No guards in sight, which meant they were inside, or watching from somewhere smarter. The front door was unlocked. Marcus stepped in. The smell hit him first, polished wood, lemon cleaner, and something metallic underneath. Blood, diluted but present. His jaw tightened. He followed the light. His father sat at the head of the table, wrists zip-tied to the chair arms. His suit jacket was gone, shirt rumpled, face swollen but alert. In front of him sat Victor Rourke, perfectly relaxed, rolling a glass of bourbon between his palms. "You always did hate surprises," Rourke said without looking up. "Sit down, Marcus." Marcus didn't sit. "You dragged him into this," Marcus said. Rourke smiled. "No, he dragged you into it. I just collected." Marcus looked at his father. "Did you know?" His father swallowed. "I thought I was protecting you," he said hoarsely. "They came to me years ago, wanted a legal buffer. I told myself it was hypothetical, future tech. I never thought—" "You never asked," Marcus said. "That's the point." Rourke stood and walked slowly around the table. "Family is a remarkable leverage system," he said. "Messy, emotional, efficient. You exposed my operation, burned assets worth billions. That has consequences." "What do you want?" Marcus asked. Rourke stopped behind Marcus's father and rested a hand on his shoulder. "You fix Atlas, you restore the ghost layer, quietly, permanently, or I leave him here and disappear." Marcus felt the trap close. If he complied, the system lived on. If he refused, he reached into his jacket and pulled out the hard drive. "You already lost," Marcus said. Rourke laughed. "Did I?" Marcus slid the drive onto the table. "Everything you touched is mirrored. Deadman triggers, distributed backups. If I don't check in every 6 hours, every journalist and regulator in the hemisphere gets the rest." Rourke's smile faltered for half a second. "That's a bluff," he said. Marcus met his eyes. "Check your phone." Rourke did. His face changed. Outside, distant rotors began to thump the night air. Marcus leaned forward. "You built your empire on invisibility. I made it loud." Sirens grew closer. Rourke exhaled slowly, then stepped back from the table. "You really are your mother's son," he muttered. "Always had a talent for timing." He raised his hands just as floodlights washed over the estate. Marcus moved to his father, cutting the ties. "Are you okay?" Marcus asked. His father nodded, shame heavier than pain. "I don't deserve— We'll talk later," Marcus said, "if there's a later." As agents stormed the house, Marcus's phone buzzed one last time. A new message. This was only one network. Marcus looked up at the ceiling, at the walls that had never held him. "I know," he whispered. And for the first time, he was ready. The arrests made headlines for 48 hours. Then the story started to fracture. Marcus watched it happen from a borrowed apartment overlooking the river. Blinds half closed, news muted on 3 different screens. Rourke in cuffs. Congressional aides stepping aside. His father released to a private hospital under federal protection. Clean enough for the public. Incomplete enough to be dangerous. Because Rourke had been right about one thing. It was only one network. Atlas was quieter now, stripped down to its bones, but Marcus could still feel the pressure around it. Systems probing, requests masquerading as maintenance pings, governments and corporations suddenly very interested in consultation. Everyone wanted control. No one wanted accountability. Daniel called once. Marcus didn't answer. Some bridges stayed burned for structural reasons. At 2:11 a.m., Atlas flagged something Marcus hadn't programmed it to flag anymore. A pattern, subtle, global, cargo delays aligning with currency fluctuations. Relief shipments rerouted away from regions on the verge of default. Pressure without fingerprints. Someone else had built a system like his, or stolen the idea before Atlas ever existed. Marcus pulled the last untouched archive from cold storage. Old research, early models, the ones he'd abandoned because they were too scalable, too tempting. A name surfaced in the metadata, a consortium, obscure, well-funded, untouched by the Rourke fallout. Marcus leaned back, exhausted, and laughed once, short, humorless. His phone buzzed, unknown number, different this time. "Impressive work. You solved a local problem. Ready to talk about the global one?" Attached was a live feed, a port, not Virginia, not even the U.S. containers moving in perfect synchronization. Marcus shut his eyes. He could walk away, shut Atlas down completely, disappear into advisory work, make money, sleep again. Let the world eat itself in quieter ways. Instead, he started typing. "If we talk, it's on my terms." The reply came instantly. "Of course it is. That's why we chose you." Marcus stared at the screen as dawn crept over the river. Same pattern, different scale. He didn't power Atlas down, he rewrote it. And somewhere, far from the river, systems began to notice. Marcus shut Atlas down at sunrise. Not the whole system, just the parts that made it invisible. He let the logs stay loud, the routes transparent, the permissions chained to public oversight nodes he didn't control. It hurt to do it. Atlas had always been cleanest when no one was watching. But secrecy was the disease. He'd been treating symptoms. The call came an hour later. No threats this time, no theatrics. Just a woman's voice, calm, accented, expensive. "We represent a coalition," she said. "Ports, banks, governments, you've already mapped us." "Yes," Marcus replied, "and you've already lost leverage." A pause, then a faint smile in her voice. "You're confident." "I'm tired," Marcus said. Different thing. They offered him protection, resources, a seat at a table so large it didn't have edges. He declined all of it. "I'll consult," he said, "publicly, with constraints, or not at all." Another pause. Longer. "Very well," she said. "You understand this limits your lifespan." Marcus looked out over the river, morning traffic starting to crawl like blood through veins. So does everything that matters. The line went dead. Weeks passed. Rourke disappeared into pretrial purgatory. The consortium fragmented under scrutiny, forced into daylight where deals rotted faster. Atlas became something else. Not a weapon, not a secret, but an infrastructure standard, boring, accountable, harder to abuse. Marcus visited his father once. No accusations, no absolution. Just silence and a shared understanding that some debts never cleared, only stopped accruing. When Marcus left, he didn't take anything with him. He moved again. Smaller place, fewer windows. He taught once a week at a state university, logistics and systems ethics, to kids who didn't care about his name and asked better questions than most executives ever had. One night, months later, Atlas flagged an anomaly. Marcus looked at it. He fixed it. Then he closed the laptop and went to sleep. The world kept moving. So did the boxes. This time, on terms he could live with. And somewhere deep in the system, for the first time since he'd built it, Atlas stopped choosing targets. It just did its job,